Let me put you on some game here. So in this video, we are going to talk about what characteristics to specifically vet for when you are doing your due diligence on a vendor. Now, a lot of the agents that we work with have articulated to us a lot of the issues that they have experienced in the past working with a lot of the other vendors in the marketplace. To be specific, a lot of the issues that we hear all the time when agents have worked with other vendors and have been burned is the leads were super poor quality and they were not able to fund a policy. Now, to be a little bit more articulate on the lead quality, these are leads who are too early in the sales process, needed a lot of educating in order to pull them through the sales process. These might have even been leads that didn't even know what an IUL is in the first place. These generally have a super low show rate and connection rate. And generally there's just a lot of convincing that has to happen in the sales process. They're not yet bought in on the idea of an IUL. And on the other side, the financial qualification of it, these are people who are generally either not interested in an IUL to begin with, or they were interested, but they just can't fit an IUL and they have to be sold into a different financial product. So if I was an agent and I was actively vetting, if policy assistance didn't exist, this is what I would be looking for in terms of characteristics. The first thing is I would be asking questions around the quality of the leads. Now, you can really tell the quality of leads based on the answer that you're going to get from somebody. If I were to just get an answer like, yeah, no, you get super high intent leads and we get them from social media, I'd be, not a chance. This is one of those vendors that will literally just set your money on fire. There's a lesson that I would love to pass on to you here. There's a book by a guy by the name of Chet Holmes. Okay, the book is called The Ultimate Selling Machine. In this book, there's a principle called stadium selling. And in this book, he really segments the market into 4 different categories. The first category being 30% of the market that they know they're not a fit and they will never buy. No interest. Now, the second segment is another 30% segment, which they don't think they're interested. They potentially one day might be interested. So this is another 30%. Think a fit. As an example of this is someone who does have the funds, the monthly contribution, and has the assets in place, but they just have other priorities in their life right now. And even if you really pitch them on the idea of it, they're just not going to pull the trigger until circumstances in their life change. Now, the third demographic is what we call the needs convincing demographic. This is an additional 37% of the market. They're not thinking about it, but they can be convinced of an IUL. Needs convincing. Now, the final 3% is the people that are actually looking at any given time in the market and they're actually deep in the buying process of an IUL. These are people that actually have an understanding of what an IUL is and they're educated and they need far less effort to turn into a policy. These are really layup deals in a sense. So 3%, this is what we call in market. The in market demographic is where the money is made. When you're making a decision on which vendor to go with, we need to be specifically thinking in terms of how can we tap into this 3% of the market that is actually in the buying process looking for an IUL. Now, a big mistake that agents end up making before they end up entering into a contract with one of these vendors is vetting out which type of leads that they're actually going to be receiving. A lot of these vendors, because there's only 3% of the market at any given time that is actually looking for an IUL, and these vendors are wanting to scale their business. They don't give a rip if they're going to give you people in the needs convincing category, or even if it's a not a fit category, because their interests are in just selling you leads, and they're just going to continue scaling the quantity of agents that they sell month over month. And so if I was an agent, I'm looking to see how can I maintain my lead quality as high as possible and tap into this 3% of the in-market demographic that's actually looking for an IUL. Now, there's a couple ways that we can actually source the leads. The first being social ads. Now with social ads nowadays, there's a lot of advertising restrictions on the platform specifically. What's happened over time is a lot of these giant ad platforms have been sued, and so therefore they've had to tighten their advertising restrictions because advertisers have just taken advantage of the targeting options. Not to say that there's no money in social ads. So because of these tight restrictions, it limits your ability to target people that are actually in this in-market demographic with social ads. Even a year ago, we as advertisers had the ability to target people that were actually looking for an IUL. There was literally an interest that you could target inside the ad platform for IULs. Now, since they have added these advertising restrictions for all financial services, specifically financial products in the insurance space, we as advertisers no longer have the ability to target inside the platform people specifically looking for IULs. So if you're running social ads, it's really kind of a spray and play game. A lot of agents that are still sourcing their leads from social, and you can go out and ask people feedback with the leads that they have. Even if they are writing production off of leads that are coming from social media, they have to quite literally filter through dozens of leads to actually get connected with someone who's actually looking for an IUL. Are there people writing production off of social leads? Absolutely there is. It's just your probability of connecting with this 3% of people that are in market that are actually looking for an IUL is very low with social platforms nowadays. If I'm an agent, to be super transparent with you, I would not run ads on social media. Can you write policies with it? Sure. But your probability of actually making return on whatever you invest with one of these vendors with social ads is very low. Now, the other ad platforms that are available to us are search ads. Search ads in particular are extremely powerful when done properly. Search ads are great, but there's a big caveat to search in particular, because remember, we still need to tap into this 3% of the in-market demographic. So search ads give us as advertisers the ability to target specific phrases in the search engine. Now, the quality of people that come through search ads in particular will come down to what we're actually targeting in terms of keywords. So myself as an advertiser, I've had the opportunity to actually work with some of these other larger vendors in the space before Policy Assistance as a marketing consultant. And I actually did help them with their search ads until I realized, well, they're literally screwing so many agents over because they're just spray and pray going absolute mass market here. They were going after people in this category, and this category, and selling them as leads to agents, and people were getting burned, and I can't get behind that. I digress. Anyways, my point being, we have to be very articulate in which terms we are targeting in the search engine. So if we're targeting specific phrases that would make sense contextually to someone who is in the later stages of the buying process, actually looking for an IUL, we would therefore have a higher probability of actually connecting with someone who's interested in the first place. An example of this would be like IUL quotes. This would make a lot of sense. Someone who is searching an IUL quote, they already know what an IUL is, most likely because they're literally searching the name of it, right? They're in this stage actively looking to try and find an agent to find the best deal or trying to find the right fit. I would be looking to see which terms the actual vendor is targeting. This will tell me a lot in terms of who is actually coming through the search ads in particular. With search ads, you can absolutely still target the needs convincing demographic and the don't think I'm a fit demographic. This is more of the mass market demographic. If a vendor is targeting something like create generational wealth, who do you think is going to be coming through, right? This is people that don't know what an IUL is yet. They're searching, how can I create generational wealth? Something like that is going to be definitely more in the needs convincing demographic. This is someone who, sure, an IUL absolutely lines up with that, but they're not necessarily sold on the idea of an IUL yet. They're going to need convincing. And there could be also other circumstances where they are further up on this funnel as well, where they're in the, I don't think I'm a fit right now at this point. So to recap, if I was an agent and I was vetting to see where the leads actually come from, I would be asking questions around this. So just to be super clear here, I would absolutely cross them off my list if they're targeting stuff like this. And I would ask probing questions to see, well, Would you guys target something like generational wealth? Doesn't that make sense for an IUL? Absolutely not. The only scenario in which we've found where we are able to repeat successful actions and continuously get people through that are actually looking for IULs, if it was me, I would only be working with someone who is targeting something around getting a quote for an IUL or other super high intent search terms that would only make sense contextually to someone who actually understands what an IUL is in the first place, and they have motivation in the buying process. And this can only be done through search ads in particular. And the second thing that I'm going to be vetting for in particular as an experienced advertiser is what we call pixel conditioning. Now, back when there wasn't restrictions on a lot of the social platforms, we did have the ability to do this. What pixel conditioning is in a nutshell is whoever we send back to the ad platform is trained to go find more of those people. So if we were to send back every single person that comes through and fills out a form, whether they are interested in an IUL or not, whether they were able to fund an IUL or not, the algorithm will go try and find more of those people. What ends up happening is, yes, absolutely, the lead vendor ends up getting cheaper leads as a result, and you'll get more volume of leads, but cheaper leads are really more expensive. So pixel conditioning, so this is a super important one, and I will show you why cheaper leads are more expensive in a second here. I'll put it into a model for you. So in an ideal world, if I am not looking at it from the perspective of a vendor, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of an agent that is trying to tap into this 3% of the in-market demographic that is actually looking for an IUL, what I would be doing as an advertiser, if let's say I was running my own ads or I'm looking for a vendor in particular, I'm only going to be sending back qualified people back to the pixel. Okay, this is essentially just the algorithm. So sending qualified leads back. You can still absolutely get all of the leads that fill out the form, but you only want to send the people that you want the algorithm to go find more people that are similar back to the ad platform. Again, this is what we call pixel conditioning. This is something that we can do with search ads in particular, but it is, once again, it's not something that we can do with social ads. So 2 for 2 right there, the reason why search ads make sense. Now, I've never seen any vendor that actually does this properly. This is something that I learned at my previous job working in a marketing agency where I was quite literally managing millions of dollars a month in ad spend on search ads in particular, and this crushes. Now, what we do specifically for our agents that I think makes the most sense is we give our agents the qualified leads, and this is what they specifically pay for. This is someone who is literally searching for something along the lines of IUL quotes, something that is going to be in market. And then in addition to that, they only pay for people that are qualified based on monthly contributions. In our case, it's 25 to 60 and can contribute at least bare minimum 300 a month. If they're outside of that age range, they need to have specific assets in place in order to qualify. If someone does not qualify, we give our agents overflow leads. The overflow leads do not get sent back to the ad platform for pixel conditioning reasons, and they really are not a fit for IULs. First off, we don't want the ad platform going to try and find more of those people, and they just aren't a fit for an IUL. But there's still additional opportunity with overflow leads in particular that we have opportunity to push them into other financial products such as annuity that just might make a little more sense for them. So to be clear, if you're going after the in-market demographic of people that are actually looking for an IUL, they're interested and they're in this 3% bracket, and you're doing it through search ads in particular. And in addition to that, you're using pixel conditioning to make sure that you're only sending the qualified people back so that you continuously get more qualified people. You're speaking with qualified leads. These leads are not cheap, to be clear. There is a lot of filtering in place. If we were to not do the pixel conditioning stuff and we were just to do search, for us to tap into, just to be super transparent, for our costs of fulfillment for our agents, for us to tap into this 3% of the market, our cost per lead for one of our agents, cost per qualified lead, is quite literally 8 to 10 times higher than a lot of the other vendors out in the space that will sell you leads from social media, but they're going to be in the needs convincing and mass market, like some of these categories right up here. So you can absolutely go the route of cheap leads if you want volume, but your probability of actually writing more policies off of it substantially diminishes when you're speaking with people who are too early in the sales process. They have no level of interest. They might have a level of interest at some point, but it's really not a good time, or they're in the needs convincing demographic. Really I'm just going to literally like circle it here with red. Like, this is the demographic of people that I'm talking about here. This is who I would avoid like the absolute plague. For me, if I was writing policies and I'm buying leads, once again, I'm going after the in-market demographic, but it absolutely is more expensive. So to be clear, cheap leads in a way are absolutely more expensive. If we were to put this into a financial model here as an example, okay, and to be very, 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 very clear, this is in no way, shape, or form an income claim. So don't interpret this as an income claim. I'm just showing you the math behind if we are going after high quality leads who are in market that are actually financially qualified. Yes, it absolutely costs more money to acquire those leads, but if we were to buy a whole batch, those leads make more sense rather than going the volume route. So as an example, in this model here, this is for qualified leads. Now on our end here, 160 per lead. For our agents, that is like the most expensive leads that we sell. This is generally if someone buys a small pack of leads. We generally see a higher show rate on these leads because their level of interest is already there. They're already searching for a quote. So we'll see 70% show rate on average if we have agents that are actually following our best practices. Oftentimes it's a 2-call close at minimum, 70% booking rate, meaning the first call was a fit and we actually move forward with them. I'm just trying to be conservative for you here. Show rate to the second call generally is substantially higher just because their level of interest is absolutely peaked if the first call went well. And an experienced closer, who, to be very clear, that's who we vet for in our sales process, they generally close between 30 and 40% of all qualified leads that make it through to the second call. If we're assuming someone has the monthly contributions of at least bare minimum $300 a month, which I wouldn't ever work with a vendor if they're sending you anything less than that, we can assume that AP is going to be about 5K. Assuming a lower commission rate, let's just go 95%. If we were to spend $4,000 in leads at $160 cost per qualified lead, that would essentially give us 12K, assuming these funnel statistics in AP. That would give us a 3 ROAS essentially. Our cost per policy sold with these funnel statistics is about $1,500. Now, these funnel statistics will obviously vary depending on your skill set as an agent. Now, on the flip side, let's say we spend $4,000 in cheap leads. Oftentimes, I'm just gonna set my relatively similar to what the market's at, $45 per lead. What we end up seeing is a substantially lower booking ratio from these leads of the total leads. So out of, if we got 89 leads at $45 per lead, we generally see only like 20% of those actually book. That's the feedback that I get from a lot of agents. And the show rates are generally much lower. Show rates are in like the 40s range on these leads on average. And then we can assume the rest of the funnel statistics, if we're able to connect with someone who's actually looking, can hold relatively similar to the other statistics that I showed you. So 75% second call booking rate and a 70% show rate on the second call, and assuming the same close rate, 38%, just to keep the model very similar. Generally with these leads, the AP is like substantially lower just because there's so many people who are mass market and not financially qualified with the cheap leads. So we set in this example here the AP to be about 3K. Will you get some absolute whales that come through social ads? You certainly can, but this is just the feedback that I've gotten from the marketplace. So in this example here, you spent 4K and you had these following funnel statistics, which are very common with what I'm seeing with agents that are actually buying leads through social vendors. They end up spending 4K and they end up making 4,800 in AP, and that gives you a 1 ROAS. A lot of agents are literally just breaking even and they're just trying to find other places to invest their capital. So to be clear, we could do a whole bunch of financial modeling, and I absolutely am going to have a whole bunch of other videos specifically on financial modeling. Once again, to be clear, don't take this as an income claim. I'm just purely trying to show you the difference in math and the funnel statistics for what the commission potential difference is from cheap leads versus more expensive leads that are actually looking for an IUL and that are in the market and have been financially qualified. So to be clear, like I showed you before, just to summarize, if I was vetting a vendor and I'm looking for certain characteristics, I'm going to be asking questions around who they're actually going after. And I'm going to be like digging very deeply into this in the sales call. Are they going after someone who is in market, or are they going to be going after needs convincing and mass market demographics where my capital is going to be literally just torched and I'm going to get burned? Are they running search ads, or are they running social ads? If they're running search ads specifically, without giving this away, like I'm going to be asking specifically, what are you guys actually targeting? To be clear, if they say that we're targeting things like, we'll target stuff like create generational wealth. And the final thing is pixel conditioning. This can only be done with search ads, to be clear once again. And I only really want to be paying for people that are going to be qualified opportunities. For me, it just doesn't make sense to be paying for leads that have no interest in IULs, that I'm going to have to invest a lot of time, effort, and education into in order to get the deal done. And I certainly don't want to be paying for a whole bunch of unqualified leads. Appreciate you watching. Hope this was helpful.